Shakespeare in Hathaway. Then Paris is on the brink of revolt. Les Miserables. Later, a breakthrough in the case. 13.
Tonight, it's a mystery. The worrying coronavirus cases that look set to trigger even tougher restrictions for Victoria.
We've got numbers that are too high. We've got every reason to believe that these current settings will not get this job done.
Also tonight, another one-day record for infections around the world. A sky-high smuggling operation comes crashing down. And a magic comeback for Majak Door.
It's an amazing story. It's a human triumph story. That's what it is.
Good evening, Mary Gearin with ABC News. There's growing concern tonight over the number of mystery cases of COVID-19 in Victoria, cases that can't yet be traced back to their point of origin. And it's looking ever more likely the state government will impose tougher restrictions, possibly as early as tomorrow. The roller coaster ride of new case numbers continued today, well down on the highs of the past 2 days, but still a worry at 397. 3 more Victorians have died, a man and a woman in their 80s and a woman in her 90s. The number of people in hospital has jumped to 379. 41 are in intensive care, with 24 patients on ventilators. Police have now conducted hundreds of thousands of checks in the lockdown areas and at checkpoints, and they're still finding people flouting the rules. And with nearly 6,000 active cases in Victoria, including 49 of unknown origin, the screws are set to tighten. Elias Kluwer begins our coverage.
3 weeks into stage 3 stay-at-home restrictions, the next steps in Melbourne's lockdown are looming.
We've got numbers that are too high. We've got every reason to believe that these current settings will not get this job done.
The government and health authorities are poring over the data, and the numbers most troubling, according to the Premier, is the level of community transmission.
Mystery cases, 49 cases where we simply cannot track back what the index case is, what's the zero case, where did it start, where did those people get it from.
With 10 postcodes around Melbourne now with at least 100 active cases and almost 6,000 statewide, it's a matter of when, not if, further restrictions will be applied.
The Premier isn't providing that clarity to Victorians, and as a result that confidence is waning by the day.
Each day brings more pain for those in aged care. There are now 100 separate outbreaks in facilities across Melbourne and over 1,000 active cases. The 3 latest COVID-19 related deaths were all linked to aged care residences.
Is once you start getting community transmission, you start getting cases in residential aged care facilities, you start getting cases among other elderly people in the community.
Here at St Basil's, there's now 134 cases linked to the home. WorkSafe has moved in to investigate a number of aged care facilities, but due to health and safety regulations, inspectors won't be physically allowed in some places, meaning investigations for now will have to be conducted over the phone. Despite the devastating effects the virus is having, people are still breaking the rules.
I'm fed up with it. Victoria Police are fed up with it.
Police issued 168 fines yesterday, including to a person driving from the hotspot of Werribee to Springvale to buy groceries. Another drove from Melbourne to Ballarat for fresh air, twice. And one who claimed they drove more than 300 kilometres from Melbourne to Wodonga for a Big Mac. While 31 people were fined $200 for not wearing a mask.
Victoria Police en masse have shown a great deal of discretion. They handed out masks, they only gave people fines who were blatantly not doing it.
What we're seeing is too many individuals who are going about their lives as though this pandemic doesn't exist.
Ignorance certainly isn't bliss in this climate. Elias Kluwer, ABC News, Melbourne.
A Brisbane aged care nurse has tested positive to COVID-19. That's the latest case linked to 3 women accused of travelling from Melbourne to Queensland, flouting quarantine rules. The nurse works at a facility that was placed into lockdown yesterday after her husband tested positive.
The couple had been dining at the same restaurant as one of the trio who are now facing charges.
She and her husband have been absolutely model citizens. They really and truly have been unbelievably fantastic.
Worryingly though, the woman works as a nurse at an aged care home at Pinjarra Hills, which was yesterday placed into lockdown as a precaution.
We do think that it was possible that she was infectious when she worked her last shift at that facility, so we are going to continue to have that facility in lockdown.
Testing of the centre's 105 elderly residents and its 150 staff is now underway. There are no plans to move any residents unless they test positive to COVID-19.
All of the residents have their own private bedroom with an ensuite bathroom, and the staff are absolutely superb.
Queensland Health will also provide additional staff to cover for workers required to quarantine. It's possible other aged care homes will be impacted too, with some staff working across facilities. Dr Young has been quick to reassure relatives.
I assure them that their loved ones are receiving the best possible care.
More than 11,000 people were tested across the state yesterday, a record number that was reflected in the long queues at testing locations.
I want to especially thank our pathology staff. They have done an incredible job working round the clock to process that many tests.
Queensland Health has also added to the list of locations the woman's husband visited before testing positive. They include cafes and shops at Garden City Shopping Centre, 2 Bunnings stores and a sporting complex.
If you've been to one of those locations, there's no need to panic. It's designed to assist you in assessing what your level of risk is and go and get tested.
While the Brisbane cluster is likely to grow, the message from authorities remains the same. Stay home if you're sick, wash your hands and most importantly, keep your distance. Daya Clark, ABC News.
New South Wales has recorded its first COVID-19 death in more than 2 months, bringing the state's toll to 52. An 83-year-old man has died in the first fatality linked to the Crossroads Hotel cluster. 17 new cases have been confirmed in the state's latest testing. 3 of those infections are unable to be sourced.
Clearly, it is a serious concern every time we have a case where we are unable to trace it back to see who infected who in the train of transmission.
The Thai Rock restaurant in Sydney's West has the most active cases with 98 infections. Globally, COVID cases have surged to another one-day record. The World Health Organization has recorded more than 292,000 cases. The US accounts for almost a quarter of the new infections. And as America grapples with its response to the crisis, the nation's top health officials have been marched before Congress. North America correspondent Catherine Diss reports from Washington.
After an explosion in cases in July, Arizona is now reporting its worst ever daily figures for coronavirus deaths. Among them, Mark Urquiza, who lost his battle with COVID-19 after 2 weeks in hospital.
He ended up passing, alone by himself with an ICU nurse holding his hand.
His daughter Kristen blames the Trump administration.
Prior to that, he was an exuberant and healthy 65-year-old man who was just following the lead of his state governor as well as the Trump administration.
As the number of Americans lost to the disease grows, the nation's top health officials gathered at Capitol Hill to testify over the White House response.
We put out, as Ranking Member Scalise mentioned, the guidelines of a gateway, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Some were followed very carefully and some were not.
Other factors at play: no national mask-wearing policy and a failure by the public to avoid large crowds and keep physical distance, which one Republican senator sought to blame on the massive race protests in June.
Should we limit the protesting?
Well, I'm not in a position to determine what the government can do in a forceful way.
The president weighed into the hearings from Twitter, repeating a claim the US only has more cases than Europe because America does more testing. That's part of the story, but the proportion of people returning positive results here is also rapidly rising.
And the president again doubled down on a claim postal votes would lead to widespread electoral fraud.
This will be catastrophic for our nation.
With polls showing most people disapprove of the Commander-in-Chief's handling of the pandemic, he's consistently tried to change the subject. But with coronavirus deaths now consistently above 1,000 a day, even Donald Trump's dominance of the media landscape can't make COVID-19 disappear. Catherine Diss, ABC News, Washington.
Restrictions were supposed to be eased this weekend in the UK, but now that's been postponed because of a surge in coronavirus cases. Boris Johnson says it's time to squeeze the brake pedal after it was revealed the number of infections could be 8 times higher than what's been officially recorded. Europe correspondent Samantha Hawley reports from London.
It was the hottest day of the year, with temperatures soaring past 35 degrees. But this summer is not what the Brits had hoped for.
Our assessment is that we should now squeeze that brake pedal in order to keep the virus under control.
At the peak of the pandemic, daily cases in England reached nearly 4,800. Now, more than 3 months on, new infections have plunged to a 7-day average of just over 500. But worryingly, the true number is believed to be over 8 times that, with the UK's official statistics body estimating it's 4,200 a day.
I know that the steps that we're taking will be a real blow to many people.
With less than 24 hours' notice, the government's halted a planned easing of restrictions for at least the next 2 weeks.
No, we can't open, and that's a huge financial hit for us.
Indoor performance venues, casinos, bowling alleys and skating rinks will remain closed. Spectators banned at live sporting events, and weddings with up to 30 guests, like Vicky and Luke's, can no longer take place.
Once we heard about this a week before our wedding, then it was devastating and obviously very upsetting.
For months, the British government argued against mandatory mask wearing. Now it's extended it from shops to places of worship and museums. The British government's been criticised since the start of the pandemic for sending mixed messages. Now the concern is over its snap decision-making, with little warning about what measures might be taken next. The nation's chief medical officer warns the limits of what people can safely do may have been reached, and there'll be difficult trade-offs ahead. Samantha Hawley, ABC News, London.
5 men have been arrested and more than $80 million worth of drugs seized after an international smuggling operation literally came crashing down. Police believe a Melbourne-based criminal gang was trying to fly the drugs from Papua New Guinea into Australia when the plane crashed, possibly because it was overloaded with cocaine. Here's our PNG correspondent Natalie Whiting.
In far north Queensland, a plane prepares to take off, allegedly being manned by an operative of a criminal syndicate. But they don't realise police are watching.
The Queensland Joint Organised Crime Task Force was aware of their plan and was a step ahead in tracking their movements throughout this journey.
A plan to import more than $80 million of cocaine via Papua New Guinea was about to go terribly wrong. After leaving far north Queensland for PNG last Sunday, the aircraft flew below 3,000 feet to avoid radar detection. The plane landed at a remote airstrip north of Port Moresby, where it was loaded up with more than half a tonne of cocaine. But the plane didn't make it back into the air. It crashed trying to take off. The Australian Federal Police says the weight of the cocaine may actually have caused the aircraft to crash. The abandoned plane was then found empty, sparking a search in PNG for the pilot and the drugs. The Australian pilot then handed himself in to the consulate in Port Moresby and has so far been charged with illegal entry. And last night, police in Papua New Guinea found the missing drugs. In Australia, 5 men have been arrested and charged with offences including drug importation and money laundering. They face a possibility of life in prison.
It will be alleged these criminals are part of a wider organised crime network operating in Victoria.
Police allege the plan had been to take the drugs south in this truck. It's believed the syndicate has links to the Calabrian mafia in Italy.
This audacious attempt shows the great lengths that syndicates will go to bring these substances into Australia.
But police say this should serve as a warning that they can keep pace with the plots. Natalie Whiting, ABC News.
A man has been arrested in relation to the Freeway crash where 4 police officers were killed earlier this year. Police say a 49-year-old man from Frankston was taken into custody at Lyndhurst this morning. The 4 officers died after a truck crashed into them as they were questioning the driver of a Porsche they were impounding on the side of the Eastern Freeway on the 22nd of April. Aboriginal youth workers say a new national strategy is not enough to stop the rising number of young Indigenous prisoners. The government this week unveiled a 16-target plan to close the gap in Indigenous imprisonment, child removals and suicide. But as Indigenous Affairs correspondent Isabella Higgins reports, young people say street-level support is what is needed.
As a child, Carly Stewart faced some of life's toughest challenges. Before reaching her teens, she was homeless and struggling at school.
I think by the time I got to 12, 13, I genuinely didn't think that I would still be here at this age. And I think that a lot of young Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people feel that way. You think, oh, I'm going to be a criminal, not because you want to be, but also because you know that you're, treated as that in the community.
Her younger brother Trey says they lost friends and family to suicide and prison.
I always had hope for a better day and hope for a better life for myself, for my mum, for my little siblings and stuff like that. And I guess that's what's been the main fight for me.
The federal government's new 16-target Closing the Gap plan aims to fix the troubles Carly and Trey faced. In a decade, it hopes to improve Indigenous housing, imprisonment, child removals and suicide. But Aboriginal leaders say it requires investment in services that can fix underlying social problems such as mental health and substance abuse.
We have to develop, systems that actually meet the needs of Aboriginal people wherever they live. And I'm hoping that this is about empowering Aboriginal communities to be able to come up with responses to their needs in their communities.
A lot of the services that I was involved in growing up had so much of an influence over me and whether I, felt like I had the capacity to engage in our society and, to go to school every day, to feel worthy of having a bank account.
The siblings finished school and went on to become youth workers.
I'm employed and stuff and I think in that sense, things are starting to look up.
The federal government says funding for the Closing the Gap strategy will be announced soon. Isabella Higgins, ABC News, Sydney.
Hong Kong police have issued arrest warrants for 6 pro-democracy activists living in exile in Western countries, including Britain and the US. They would face charges under China's new national security law if returned to Hong Kong. It comes after the city's chief executive, Carrie Lam, announced local elections would be delayed for 1 year because of a rise in COVID cases. But critics say the move is a political ploy to stop the momentum of Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. James Murdoch has resigned from the board of News Corp over disagreements with its editorial content. In the past, Rupert Murdoch's younger son has locked horns with his brother Lachlan over coverage of environmental issues. And the Boston Marathon bomber has successfully appealed against his death sentence for his role in the attack that killed 3 people and wounded more than 260 others. A US federal appeals court threw out the death sentence of Johar Tsarnaev in the 2013 bombing, saying the judge who oversaw the case did not adequately screen jurors for bias. Tackling your first professional acting role would be exciting for anyone, but for teenager William Best, who has cerebral palsy, it was especially satisfying. Now he's part of a push to see more people with disabilities on our screens.
Nobody's gonna mess me around. Canberra teen William Best has plenty to sing about. The 13-year-old actor has just signed up with an agent, following his debut at the Sydney Film Festival.
They sent through the script. I read through it tons of times.
The gig posed a few challenges for Will.
It was hard, but it was definitely fun and exciting.
Safety Net centres on Terry, a boy who lives with disability, just like Will. But far more challenging was the emotional pain his character was going through.
His sensitivity and his understanding of why this was an important story to communicate, along with his sense of humour, meant that he really felt like the right person for the role.
Will suffers from chronic pain and stiffness in his limbs, the effects of cerebral palsy. The film's director, Anthea Williams, says she cast him for his acting ability, but also because she wants to see more people with disabilities on screen, after struggling with arthritis when she was a child.
A huge percentage of our population live with disability, and yet when you see someone with disability on stage, that is generally the great challenge that they're dealing with. But that's not how our lives work. We're complex.
Is this my bed, miss?
Will's dream is not only to be a performer in the future, but also to see more people like him on screen.
My story isn't William Best disabled actor. It's just William Best actor, and a kick-ass actor, if I do say so myself.
This is just a facet of this child's life, and that was really important to me. It is not key to the story.
A call for change for the next generation. Nikki Burnside, ABC News, Canberra.
To sport now, and North Melbourne's Majak Daw has made an emotional and remarkable return to football in the Kangaroos' 69-point win over Adelaide today. Last night, Brisbane thrashed Essendon by 63 points, while Hawthorn came from behind to beat the Blues. The Crows have now lost 12 matches on the run, as the Kangaroos snapped their 6-game losing streak, with Daw's return as the highlight.
More than a year and a half after his bridge fall, Majak Daw made an amazing comeback to football and looked right at home.
Majak Daw goes up and takes a beautiful mark.
The Roos had dropped poster boy Ben Brown, and the forward line clicked into gear with 4 goals in the first quarter. With Tex Walker ill, the Crows missed a forward target and could only manage 3 goals in the first half. The Kangaroos started to hit their straps as the lead grew.
Beautifully, that is champagne football. Todd Goldstein delivers beautifully and Higgins kicks a ripper.
It was last versus second last, but the Crows looked a long way behind the Roos. Trailing by 34, the Crows coach demanded his team show some bottle in the third quarter, but North remained on top and the Kangaroos easily stretched the lead to 50 points. North Melbourne provided some nice highlights in the last quarter. One thing remained to really top off the win, and Majak delivered.
It's an amazing story. It's a human triumph story, that's what it is. And the emotion says more than any words could possibly say. Look at that.
Todd Goldstein was superb as North Melbourne cruised to the biggest score from any side this season. A win all footy fans could celebrate. Last night, Brisbane consolidated second spot on the ladder with a 63-point thumping of Essendon. The Bombers only managed 3 goals, while Charlie Cameron kicked 4.
Got it home! A beauty!
Debutant Sam Draper was a rare positive for the Bombers. The Hawks' rough season looks set to continue when the Blues led by 31 points in the first quarter, but a stunning 10-goal turnaround saw Hawthorn post its 4th win of the year. Peter Lusted, ABC News, Melbourne.
Collingwood has been fined $25,000 for breaching coronavirus protocols over a game of tennis played by coach Nathan Buckley. Buckley and assistant coach Brenton Sanderson played a match with 2 people from outside the approved club list. They say they will personally pay the fines. Collingwood is the 5th Victorian club to be fined for protocol breaches in the past week. The Sunshine Coast Lightning has opened up the Super Netball season with a 66-48 win over the Queensland Firebirds. The first round fixture was amended after the competition relocated to Queensland due to border restrictions. The Lightning trailed by 11 goals but took advantage of the new 2-point scoring rule as Steph Wood nailed 10 from 11 super shots.
Well, she nails this, it'll be her 5th straight. Steph Wood goes for 5 super shots in a row.
In today's other match, the West Coast Fever beat the Adelaide Thunderbirds 74-62. In the A-League, second-placed Melbourne City has upset Sydney FC 2-0 at Sydney Olympic Park. City was playing its first match since March and put the newly crowned minor premiers to the test. Craig Noon put the visitors in front in the 57th minute. Jamie McLaren soon doubled that lead.
Oh, brilliance! Outside of the boots to take the lead in the Golden Boot race.
Last night, the Western Sydney Wanderers boosted their finals hopes with a 1-0 victory against the Wellington Phoenix. An Indigenous man is helping preserve First Nation cultures, one photo at a time. Trent White picked up a camera almost 2 years ago after watching traditional knowledge disappear with the passing of each elder.
On the plains of Hedlow Creek in central Queensland, a unique photo shoot is underway.
1, 2, 3.
Photographer Trent White is taking his subjects back to their traditional roots with his breathtaking portraits.
Being painted up was a part of life in traditional times. We don't ever want to lose that. There's a lot of different clan groups and a lot of different paint styles, and we're not all the same. Just move your whole body that way.
Picking up a camera was a turning point for the former miner from central Queensland. A Darrinbal and Yiman man, he wanted to find a way to better connect to his Indigenous culture.
I went cold turkey on the drink and the smokes, and then I just went and bought a camera.
Darrinbal and Torres Strait Islander mother Kayleen Adidi was nervous about her first shoot.
The first photo shoot I did with Trent was probably the first time I've actually really got culturally connected and wanted to do something like that.
It's a feeling many of Mr. White's clients are familiar with.
They may come from families who don't dance or not involved in a lot of things community-wise, and they don't have that opportunity.
It's empowering, it gives me confidence as a black woman.
Trent White says many Indigenous people struggle with identity, something he's trying to change.
They feel kind of shame or embarrassed to be able to want to paint up. They think of what others may think of them.
Showing my family, showing community, not only that, passing it down to the little people. This is really important because we want them to be proud of who they are and where they come from.
An opportunity little Junda Marley has been granted at just 3 weeks old. Erin Semler, ABC News, Hedlow Creek.
Absolutely divine. And now to our weather. And what a lovely morning it turned out to be for most of us. There was no rainfall overnight, really. Overnight temps were a little below average. There was some fog over the east and north of the state this morning. That cleared to a mostly dry and sunny day, with maximums a little above average. The state's top of 21 was in a few places. In Melbourne, the temperature reached 16.4 degrees at 3:15 this afternoon. In the city now, it's 13 degrees. Interstate today, a fair bit of sun all round. Bright skies in Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide and Darwin, mostly sunny in Perth and Hobart. Now, the satellite is showing patchy low cloud over Victoria, Tasmania and parts of New South Wales. A cold front south of the Bight will reach the far southwest of the state tonight and then weaken as it moves east tomorrow. There'll be showers in a few places tomorrow, the northeast of Queensland and southeast of Tasmania, and showers developing in the south of Western Australia. For the capital cities, it'll be mostly sunny in Sydney. Showers will increase in Perth, partly cloudy in Adelaide, a possible late shower for Hobart and sunny in Brisbane and Darwin. Back home now, we'll have some patchy morning fog and frost, mainly in the north, and then a cool day in the southwest with some isolated showers across the southwest and central areas. A generally mild day and mostly sunny across the north and east with light to moderate north to northwesterly winds. They'll ease in the evening. On the bays, 15 to 20 knot northerlies will ease to 10 knots by the afternoon and waves up to around 1.5 metres. For Melbourne, a warmer outlook than we've seen for a while, a mostly sunny day with northerly winds, a top of 17 down to 8 tonight. But brace for a few showers after that. Monday, a shower or two, 15, down to just 11 on Tuesday and Wednesday. Not much better on Thursday, 12, and a possible shower. About the same on Friday. And next Saturday, we can look forward to showers and 14. Now, just recapping tonight's main points. It's looking ever more likely the state government will impose tougher restrictions, possibly as early as tomorrow. There were 397 new cases today and another 3 deaths. But it's the number of mystery cases of COVID-19 in Victoria, cases that can't yet be traced back to their point of origin, that has authorities worried. The Premier says he has every reason to believe that these current stage 3 restrictions will not be enough to drive the numbers down. And that's it for this evening's bulletin. Thanks very much for your company tonight. Have a great evening.
Next on ABC and iView, the duo